But when you get I was going to say conflagration, but at least an intersection of both right-wing policy, right-wing attacks and social media, you end up with a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and responsible governments have to stay focused on the policies that are making a difference, and that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you have already heard that snippet from an interview Trudeau did with CNN yesterday. Jake Tapper, who of course was never a fan of Donald Trump, but was a huge fan of Justin Trudeau, obviously. And we'll talk a bit more about that. I'm still waiting to see if our guest from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, James Mason, but he was going to be on the show here, and it's James Manson from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms was supposed to be on. I have not been able to contact him this morning, so I do have a alternative recording of James if I have to use that, but we want to talk about what happened yesterday. So much goes on, even when it's a slow news day these days. And let's listen to what Donald Trump said yesterday, and then the responses from Justin Trudeau. And Pierre Poilievre, I think, was very enlightening in what he said.
Governor Trudeau, because they should be the 51st state, really. It would make a great state. And the people of Canada like it. They pay lower taxes. They have virtually no military. They have a very small military. They pay less than 1%. They're about the lowest payer in NATO. They're supposed to pay much more. They haven't been paying. They have a lot of problems. And I was with Wayne Gretzky. I said, Wayne, would you like to be the governor of Canada? I can't imagine anybody doing any better than Wayne. Wayne was not too interested. But I think he probably would have liked statehood. He's a friend of mine. He's a great guy. He's the great one. We call him the great one, right? He's a great hockey player. But I will say this. I think that it was stated pretty strongly a couple of weeks ago about Canada, and people laughed. And now they're all saying, well, it's very interesting. And I say from the standpoint of the United States, we're subsidizing Canada $200 and $250 billion a year. We have massive deficits. They've taken about 20% of our car business. I'd rather do it here. We could put tariffs on. We don't have tariffs on them yet, but that will happen. But they've taken about 20% of our car business. I'd rather have it done in Detroit or have it done in South Carolina or any other state that does cars, and we have a lot of them. We don't need Canada for that. We don't need Canada for lumber because we have big forests that we have not utilized. In some cases, they're protected, which I can take that protection off. And you take down a tree and you grow a better tree. That's, pretty common. But we don't need anything. We don't need their fuel. We don't need their energy. We don't need their oil and gas. We don't need anything that they have. And I said to Trudeau, I said, why are we subsidizing you $200 and $250 billion a year? He said, I really don't know.
Now, I'm sure even Justin Trudeau understands that the trade deficit that Canada has with the United States, or the United States has with Canada, is based on energy. And yes, Mr. Trump, the United States does need Canadian energy. And you get it at discount prices. And we're going to be listening to Pierre Poilievre make this point later. You get it at discount prices and you refine it and basically sell it to the world and sell it back to us. So there's a lot of bravado going on here. There's a lot of BS going on here. And this is all about Trump getting his way over whatever talks come up. But we'll get back to the point that Justin Trudeau is incapable of representing Canada right now. There's a lot of things to consider. And I'm not in the bag for anybody. When I disagree with Donald Trump, I'll say so. And I disagree with Donald Trump here. I think it's stupidity to talk about Wayne Gretzky as being the next prime minister. Wayne Gretzky would have to run for the Liberal Party leadership right now to be the next prime minister. And do you really think Wayne Gretzky wants to be in charge of the Liberal Party of Canada? but that's the only way he's going to become prime minister. And where's Pierre Poilievre in the equation as vis-a-vis Donald Trump? I really find this irritating because Pierre Poilievre needs to be in the conversation. And I don't blame Poilievre for this. He's doing his best to get in the conversation. Donald Trump is apparently completely unaware, or at least is pretending to be completely unaware, that there's a Conservative Party of Canada leader. There's an official opposition leader named Pierre Poilievre. Let's listen to the end of this.
And I said, well, I don't know either. I said, what would happen to Canada if we didn't? He said, Canada would be obliterated if that happened. I said, then Canada should be a 51st state.
Hello, Canada. Hello, Greenland. We love you.
All right, so Trudeau's interview, this amazes me. And we'll get to Trudeau admitting he's down in the United States in the same room, not even far from President-elect Donald Trump, and he doesn't talk to him. And so what does Justin Trudeau spend his time talking about in this CNN interview? Climate change and how the wildfires in California are to blame are caused by climate change. I can't believe he would try that one. We know they're caused by excessive brush that they haven't cleaned up underneath the power lines. Sparks fly, they start on fire. This has nothing to do with climate change. We know arson is also involved, like it was in Canada when we had our wildfire season. But listen to Justin Trudeau make it up as he goes along.
The struggle that you were having domestically, your disapproval rating had to do with, as I understand it, discontent with your government because of high inflation and the economy, and also because of immigration policies. Those are also issues that the left-wing party in this country has faced a lot of disapproval of and just lost an election over. It seems like voters in both of these, liberal democracies are sending a message to left-wing parties, liberal parties. We don't like how you're doing the economy when it comes to inflation. We don't like how you're doing immigration.
There are a lot of feelings involved. I mean, if you look at the actual numbers, inflation in Canada was lower, came down quicker. Our economy bounced back faster after the pandemic than anyone else's, including the United States. We're projected to grow faster than the United States and all other G7 countries next year. Our economy is doing very well. But when someone's paying $8 for a head of lettuce, it doesn't matter that you're doing better than they are in Spain or somewhere else. There's a sense that, okay, something's got to give. And that's where incumbents are in trouble everywhere everywhere around the world, not just in our two countries. The issue, though, is that in a time of crisis, responsible politics is around focusing on things that actually make a real difference in people's lives. We delivered $10 a day childcare.
And here come the talking points. Incredible. It's like he's back in question period. And he actually brings out that carbon rebate lie.
We're delivering a dental care program that provides free dental care to people who don't have coverage. We're moving forward on putting a price on pollution that puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians, of middle-class Canadians. These are policies that are not short-term. They're policies that will have a deep impact in the well-being of Canadians and of our country for years to come. Now, you can take those policies, like a childcare policy, and say, oh, see, that's just about wokeness and about, women's rights. Well, no, it's about getting more women into the workforce at a time where
and this guy knows all about women's rights. Mm-hmm.
We need economic growth. That's what it is. But when you get I was going to say conflagration, but at least an intersection of both right-wing policy, right-wing attacks and social media, you end up with a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and responsible governments have to stay focused on the policies that are making a difference, and that's what we've been doing.
I know.
Yeah, incredible. So he can't get through this interview without talking about climate change. So listen to this.
Wildfires increasingly encroaching on urban areas, and that's an interface fire where we're having to train up more local municipal firefighters to deal with wildfires in a way that we never had before. I've been back and forth texting with Governor Newsom. We've offered tremendous amount of equipment that they're already accepting. There's expertise. There's things that we're having to deal with together as we, of course, respond to these fires, but also know that climate change means they're going to get steadily worse, and we have to keep stepping up on fighting climate change too.
But a lot of people out there might say, what does climate change have to do with it?
Yeah, a lot of people might say that because it's got nothing to do with these wildfires. As I said, it's got everything to do with brush that is susceptible to starting on fire, and it's got everything to do with arson. It's got nothing to do with climate change. There's not a single shred of evidence for it.
This explain.
Well, when the summers get drier, when weather gets hotter, when weather patterns shift, communities that were built in a place that never saw fires are suddenly seeing fires much more frequently. There's a shift in everything that means even what we see now is going to just get worse and worse and worse over the coming decades if we're not serious about reducing our emissions and looking for ways to protect our future generations.
Incredible. He keeps that line up no matter what is actually happening. And of course, we know it's got nothing to do with climate change. There's an artificial drought. It's not because of climate change. It's because they're rerouting the water in California into the Pacific Ocean.
Trump has been needling you a bit, calling you Governor Trudeau, talking about making Canada the 51st state. Did you have any interaction with him today?
No, not today. But that's not going to happen. Canadians are incredibly proud of being Canadian. One of the ways we define ourselves most easily is, well, we're not American. There is such a depth of pride that's not actually an issue. What I think is happening in this is President Trump, who's a very skillful negotiator, is getting people to be somewhat distracted by that conversation, to take away from the conversation around 25% tariffs on oil and gas and electricity and steel and aluminum and lumber and concrete, and everything the American consumers buy from Canada is suddenly going to get a lot more expensive if he moves forward on these tariffs. And that's something that I think we need to be focusing on a little bit more.
Did the re-election of Donald Trump and this more direct confrontation with Canada over this issue play any role at all in your decision to resign as leader of your party and prime minister?
No, on the contrary. What we were able to do during the first presidency of Mr. Trump's was work together in a very challenging situation to come out with a very strong win-win in Canada-U.S. relations.
You knew he had to say challenging at some point.
With the renegotiation of the USMCA. It is a great deal for both of our countries. We've seen trade grow, we've seen opportunities grow, we've seen wealth grow in both of our countries for workers, for businesses. Working together concretely is something that we've been able to do in the past, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with him for the next 2 months while I'm still in office.
Let's talk about this potential 25% tariff from the United States on Canada. Economists say that will drive the Canadian economy into a recession, and the Canadian government is preparing.
Now, notice Trudeau's nodding here. Trump claims that Trudeau said it would obliterate the Canadian economy. Trudeau's body language here indicates that he actually did say that.
Retaliatory tariffs, if these actually go through, which do you think would be potentially the most effective against the United States? I don't want them, by the way, just as an American, I don't want these tariffs, but minerals, energy?
We don't want them either. We do not want to see tariffs on our side. We do not want to see tariffs on your side.
Yeah. And of course, he admits he's at this Jimmy Carter's funeral, state funeral, and he doesn't talk to Donald Trump about any of this. And yet they're claiming now that the Liberal leadership will be decided by March the 9th. I don't believe it. Believe it or not? No, I don't believe it. But I think Pierre Poilievre came out with some interesting points yesterday that are actually substantive, and it could be used to actually negotiate with the incoming president.
So they're all Justin Trudeau. They're all just like Justin. So what are they fighting about? Given that they agree on all of the same disastrous economic policies. They're fighting for themselves. Liberals are putting Liberals first. It's time to put Canada first. Given that all of them are the same, all of them are just like Justin, let's get this decision out of the way. We need certainty now. We cannot wait. I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to do what he has the legal power to do. He can do it without his caucus supporting him. I'm calling on him to walk to Rideau Hall and announce that there will be an Axe the Tax election now, so that Canadians can take back control of their lives and country. The choice will be simple. Either the NDP Liberals, who tax your food, punish your work, double your housing cost, unleash crime and chaos and weakness on the world stage, or common sense Conservatives who will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime, and put Canada first. We will take back control of immigration, take back control of spending, take back control of our borders, take back control of inflation, taxes, and interest rates. Take back control of the country that we knew and still love, and we will put Canada first. We will stand up and we will state clearly that Canada is a sovereign and independent country, that we will protect our integrity as a nation through strength. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to take back control and put our country first. That means rebuilding our economy, bringing home production, rebuilding our military, supporting a strong border, reinstating controls on immigration, and most of all, being proud of our country and unapologetic for our history. We need to honor our past and our shared values. We need to live out the dream that started with John A. Macdonald. Yes, I said John A. Macdonald, who believed in an independent and sovereign Canada. We need to uphold our heroes, stop tearing down our symbols, remind people who come here that when they're given a Canadian flag and they land on Canadian soil, that it's the greatest gift on earth and that they should be proud to be part of the Canadian family. That's what it means to be a proud Canadian. That's what it means to put Canada first.
Now, very good remarks, and especially about being proud of our history, be proud of our heroes. Excellent. But Pierre Poilievre needs to get into the narrative with Donald Trump. I don't know what's going on with Wayne Gretzky. It's just beyond stupidity with talking about this. But anyway, he says here he's challenging Justin Trudeau to walk down to Rideau Hall and ask for Parliament to come back and to have an election. Now, I don't think Justin Trudeau has any intention of doing that. So how else can we get over this proroguing period, which is killing Canada? Parliament suspended. Justin Trudeau likes it that way. Well, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms has an idea. It's a constitutional challenge to Justin Trudeau being allowed to prorogue for political partisan reasons. And James Manson was unable to be on the show today, unfortunately. But this is an excellent encapsulation of what he wants to do right here.
Well, good evening, everybody. James Manson here, constitutional lawyer. By now, I think quite a number of you have probably seen the news on social media that the organization that I work with, we've been able to file a challenge to Prime Minister Trudeau's prorogation of Parliament that happened yesterday. That document was filed sometime this afternoon, and I would expect that hopefully we'll be getting going with that case on an urgent basis very soon. Certainly the court will appreciate the gravity of the situation. But I wanted to reach out, to explain to everybody who's interested, exactly what the case is about and what we can expect maybe going forward. First of all, the case is interesting and very important and really quite unique in our country. It never happened before. It's never happened before that a couple of litigants, and in this case, the litigants are two citizens of Nova Scotia, they have challenged the Prime Minister's advice given to the Governor General to, as I say, prorogue Parliament. That's never happened before in Canada. There have been many prorogations, and just so that we all understand, a prorogation is essentially a royal prerogative. It goes back to the days of the kings and queens back in England, back a long time ago, when the king or the queen was the boss, and they did whatever they wanted to, and they could, if they want to, suspend Parliament for however long they wanted to. And as time went on, of course, democracy took stronger hold, and then it was the Prime Minister who was able to essentially assert his power, or, well, it was always his power at that point, over the monarch in terms of when to suspend Parliament. So now what happens is the Governor General, who acts for the King or the Queen, will do essentially what the Prime Minister advises them to do, and in this case, that's what happened yesterday. So there's nothing inherently wrong with prorogation. Prorogation really is a temporary suspension of Parliament, and usually what that is to give everybody a chance to legislatively reset the situation. So oftentimes what happens is a government will have a speech from the throne. There will be a direction laid out by the speaker, or pardon me, by the monarch, by the Governor General in this case. And once that legislative agenda is finished, then there needs to be a new direction. There needs to be new department instructions given, and there needs to be new, momentum established for new legislative policies, things like that. And that's normal. Yet that usually happens probably once every parliament or so. However, where it gets tricky is that you can't have it done. You can't prorogue Parliament to avoid political trouble. That's really what it comes down to in this case. Our case is remarkably similar. That's how, anyway, we will argue the point. To the case in 2019, when Prime Minister Boris Johnston in the United Kingdom, he attempted to prorogue Parliament for 5 weeks out of 8. And the timing was very, very tricky because, as you guys may recall, that was when the Brexit was coming, and they needed to have an agreement with the European Union about how to exit from the EU. And if they didn't, there could be a hard exit, and it would have been very catastrophic economically, politically, for the UK and maybe for the EU. So anyway, Prime Minister Johnson at the time decided anyway to prorogue Parliament for 5 weeks of the 8 remaining weeks leading up to the Brexit. And essentially he wanted to avoid scrutiny from Parliament. He wanted to avoid the tough questions, avoid all of the mess in the House of Commons that was happening at the time. And so ultimately this led to a challenge like the one that we've brought today. And the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom ruled unanimously, 11 to 0, that the exercise of the prorogation power by Prime Minister Johnson to advise, at that point, the Queen, to prorogue was unlawful. And essentially what the Supreme Court of the UK said at that point was that you can't, in the course of proroguing, you can't frustrate or prevent the ability of Parliament to oversee the government, to do its job, which is to oversee the government, to supervise the government. Because as we all know, it's Parliament that is the supreme body in a Western parliamentary system. It's Parliament, not the government. It's Parliament as an entire body that is actually the supreme body of the country. So in any event, that's what we're saying happened in this case. We are suggesting that, like what happened in the UK when Prime Minister Johnson, did what he did to really frustrate the will of Parliament to supervise the government, we're suggesting in the same vein that in this particular case, the Prime Minister has prorogued Parliament in order to really gain some political advantage here. He has given us his reasons, as you all know from yesterday's press conference. The reasons are to reset, not legislative resetting, but to reset the tone or the acrimony that he's been seeing in the House. Well, there's a way to do that. It's called have an election. There's a way to do that. It's called face the opposition, have a motion of non-confidence, and have an election. That would be the democratic and legitimate way to reset Parliament. There's another issue, which is that why 11 weeks? This is an 11-week prorogation. That seems to be an awfully long time simply to have everybody's temperature cool down.
And excellent points. And James has said he thinks he can win this. He thinks he can win this. But to get back to Pierre Poilievre, who I think needs to insert himself as much as possible, and I think he's doing a great job of inserting himself into this equation as being the prime minister in waiting. Unfortunately, it's falling on deaf ears in the United States, as far as we can see. You never know what Donald Trump is really thinking. But Poilievre clearly understands why Canada is necessary to the United States as an independent country. And it doesn't need to fold itself into the U.S. because we have nothing else to offer. And yes, our defense spending is weak. Our national defense is getting weaker. But Canada still has a lot to offer as a partner with the United States. And I think Poilievre hits the nail on the head here.
We will take back control of immigration, take back control of spending, take back control of our borders, take back control of inflation, taxes, and interest rates. Take back control of the country that we knew and still love, and we will put Canada first. We will stand up and we will state clearly that Canada is a sovereign and independent country, that we will protect our integrity as a nation through strength. First of all, this means a strong economy. We need a massive bring-it-home tax cut, lowering taxes on work, investment, energy, and making stuff in Canada will bring home billions of dollars of investment and paychecks, but will also make us more economically independent and less vulnerable to threats from abroad. Second, we need a prime minister who can make the case to our economic allies on the ground in America. We should go to the American workers in the Midwest and their union and business leaders and say, how many jobs are you prepared to lose by hitting Canadian energy with tariffs, energy that we sell to America at discounts that create six-figure jobs for American workers? How many of
Poilievre's the first one I've heard say this. Why isn't the Canadian government saying this? We're selling energy to the U.S. at discount prices. They refine it and send it back.
Those people will go out of work. How many of those hard hats will be laid down and boots will be unfilled because Americans will lose jobs due to that self-harm if those tariffs go ahead? We need to go to American home builders and say, we can help you build more affordable homes if your government would stop tariffing our softwood lumber. We need to go to the American tech companies and say, you could have access to our unmatched, totally reliable and clean electricity sources for your data centers. AI requires 10 times as much electricity as traditional information technology does.
Now, what do you think is driving this annexation idea? Poilievre hit the nail on the head here. It's about the fact that big tech needs more energy because of AI. Where do you think that's coming from? Elon Musk, perhaps? Poilievre seems to be the only politician in Canada, or the only political leader in Canada, who understands the dynamics of the economy right now. Justin Trudeau, it's his way over his head. It's way over Justin Trudeau's head.
We have the most uranium for nuclear centers. Meta, Google, Microsoft are all buying or refurbishing their own nuclear plants to power their data centers. We can do it for them here in Canada. Cold, dry climate, lots of energy, low cost, totally reliable, 100% ally right next door. We can provide that to America. And energy. Today, Venezuela being torn apart with opposition leaders being attacked. And what is America going to be forced to do? Buy Venezuelan oil. instead of good, clean Canadian oil. Not only should we condemn Maduro and the dictators in Venezuela for what they're doing, we should shut them off by shutting down their energy and their oil sales and replacing it with Canadian oil sales. The Americans, our friends, want Canadian oil, not Venezuelan, not Iranian, and not other dirty dictator oil from around the world. These are the arguments that a strong prime minister with the brains and backbones to lead a country would be making right now if we had a serious government. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to take back control and put our country first.
And we don't have a strong prime minister. We don't have a prime minister with either brains or backbone. And clearly, as I've said from the beginning here, Pierre Poilievre needs to get into this narrative with Donald Trump. Trump is clearly saying Trudeau is out. It's gone. We're not dealing with him. He's not legitimate. He needs to understand that Pierre Poilievre will be the leader he's dealing with. And we need a new election, and we need a new government as soon as possible. The tariffs are coming. Trump is serious about this. I can tell you that with incredible certainty. I don't know how serious he is about annexation, about annexing Canada, but he's damn serious about this 25% tariff. And he's not taking our border plan to spend $1.3 billion over 6 years very seriously. So that's what we're facing right now. That's what we're facing. This is indeed a crisis. And we have to realize that. Just a reminder, have a look at our story today. Yes, and I'm using the Keep Calm and Carry On mug today. Thanks for watching today, folks. I'll be back again tomorrow. My apologies, we didn't have a live interview with James from the Constitutional Center. For the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. But we're going to try again and see what happened today. It's been a terrible week for me. I had 2 interviews myself this week that were totally bungled because of technical problems and other things that came in the way. So it's not been a good week for me for interviews, either doing them myself or conducting them. So thank you for watching today. I'll be back again tomorrow. Keep resolving to resist and keep fighting. Thank you.